Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you all. So, the new season is upon us, and I figured I would go ahead and start by covering Branded Despia. This seems to pretty consistently be one of the more popular decks that I cover from season to season, so we'll just go ahead and start off strong here. I have changed up the build slightly here. I do like to update my builds from season to season. I often go to various sites just to check out what people are running, usually Master Duel meta, as well as like just various YouTube profiles, so on and so forth. I have a whole video from my Master Duel Academy series covering how I go about building my decks if you're curious in that regard. But for this one, I've mentioned this before, but you know, Branded Despia is one of those decks that I don't typically run too often outside of like covering them season to season for the deck profiles there. So in that regard, it kind of tends to be just one of those decks that I don't feel just as confident in playing as I do something like Sprite or Punk variants that I tend to play more throughout the season. But that said, I actually had a great session playing with Branded Despia. I'm actually recording this at the end of the season, so I'm going to go ahead and just show you real quick here. Currently still at Master 2. It's actually the last day. I might still make my push for Master 1, depends on how much free time I end up having today. But I actually had a very nice win streak here. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 duels from Master 3 up to Master 2 there. So that was really nice, and I wasn't really expecting it. So that was also very, very nice to just have a nice little win streak there. How often can I say nice? In any case, this build, I will say one thing in particular about it that I noticed while playing these games is that I'm a little bit lacking on Super Poly targets. The only real generic one I have is Garura. As you can see, I'm not playing Mud Dragon, and I'm not playing a recent popular Super Poly target, not just Super Poly, but also just a card you can fuse for in this deck in general, and that's a Borreload Furious Dragon. I'm noticing quite a bit of Branded Despia decks are starting to include this in their extra deck, which makes sense. It's a very powerful card in the fact that it can not only pop cards on either side of the field, but again, the fusion requirements of 2 dark dragon monsters are relatively easy to fulfill, not only just amongst the cards that are in Branded Despia's main and extra deck, but also it's generic enough that it's a good Super Poly target, especially with the Bystial monsters. Really right now, I think being at an all-time popularity in terms of how often they're seeing play, as opposed to when they first released. I'm just seeing more and more decks start to use them on ladder here, which makes sense. You know, we're in a meta where Tier Limit's really good, Dragon Link is really good, Branded Despia is really good, just a lot of late and dark decks in general kind of running around on ladder, and in turn allowing the Bystials to see a lot of successful play. So I would probably like to include either the Borreload Furious if I felt inclined to craft it, or a Mud Dragon of the Swamp in the extra deck moving forward, just to make sure that we have the targets for it. I did opt to include an Alba-Lenatrus just because it does seem like Dragon Link is starting to get more and more popular, and dragon monsters in general, again, with the Bystials, there's just a lot more of them running around in the meta. But every time I crafted this card, like when it very first came out, I don't know if I've ever summoned it. I don't think I've ever actually summoned this monster. Everyone talks about how, like, oh, the Dragon Link matchup is so easy. You just set Albaz and then summon Alba-Lenatrus, which is fair to be true. But at the same time, I've never had it come up. Maybe I just haven't been playing against that many Dragon Links. Maybe I just don't like get in that situation often enough. Maybe I've missed the opportunity to do so. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case at some point in the past, but in any case, I'd probably drop the Alba-Lenatrus in order to fit in either Borreload Furious or Mud Dragon, just to have myself some more Super Poly targets. But to be fair, we do still have a decent amount. We have the Garura, as I mentioned. The Dragostepelia is generic enough that it can often fire off the Super Poly there as well. And if your opponent's just got lighter dark monsters, you can always summon the Masquerade or Quaretits with one of your, like, Despias or something. Let's see here. I am playing a 40 card build. That's the other thing I wanted to mention about the build specifically. A lot of builds do play over 40, anywhere from like 40 to 45, with honestly 42 to 45 seeming to be closer to the average there. It's just kind of a preference thing for me, which is not really the best excuse in the world, but I just really like 40 card builds. They tend to feel a lot smoother and more consistent. I feel like going above that just makes the deck feel clunkier, but again, that's a very emotional thing. It's not something that's really rooted in logic necessarily, but yeah, like I said, I saw a nice little win streak here with this build, so we'll go ahead and show off some of the duels from that win streak after we go ahead and break break down the list card by card here. So in this build, we're playing 1 Despain Tragedy, 3 Maxx, 3 Fallen of Albaz, 2 Aluber the Jester of Despia, 3 Tri-Brigade Mercourier, 1 Springans Kitt, 2 Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous, 1 Bystial Magnamhut, 3 Bystial Saronir, 1 Bystial Druiswarm, 1 Albion the Shrouded Dragon, 1 the Bystial Lubellion, 3 Fusion Deployment, 1 Branded in White, 2 Branded Fusion, 1 Branded Lost, 1 Branded Regained, 3 Super Polymerization, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Branded Opening, 1 Branded in Red, 1 Branded Banishment, and then 2 Branded Retribution. That's going to go ahead and do it for the main deck. Now for the extra deck, we're on 1 Garura, the Wings of Restorant Life, 1 Predaplant Dragostepelia, 1 Brigand the Glory Dragon, 2 Albion the Branded Dragon, 1 Despian Quaretits, 1 Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, 2 Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon, 1 Lubellion the Searing Dragon, 1 Alba-Lenatrus the Abyss Dragon, 1 Granguignol the Dusk Dragon, it's always the dragons, huh? 1 from the Striking Dragon, and then 1 Guardian Chimera and 1 Despian Tragedy. That's going to go ahead and do it for the extra there. Let's just move on to our gameplay. Alright, so our first opponent is going to be on Traptrix, going off their username, which is Just Roba. I was like, is it Jinzo's? If it's Just Roba? But no, they were on Traptrix. We're going to be going second here. Obviously not ideal to be going second against a back row based deck, but not the worst thing in the world either. Worst things could happen, I suppose. Alright, so looks like we are starting off with the Pudica for the field spell, the Traptrix Garden. Now, of course, they're going to link off into Traptrix Sarah after that. Traptrix Garden is going to throw down the Dionea. Because Dionea was special summon, it can bring back the Pudica, which will allow them to set up the Holieta with the Sarah effect. It's like I mentioned in the viewer special, I have noticed that this newer iteration of Traptrix with the new wave of support seems to be a bit more combo-y / field swarmy, as opposed to just being like, you know, normal Traptrix, link into Sarah, set 3 or 4, which is definitely how older excuse me, Traptrix decks played there. Pardon me. Alright, so here is the Rafflesia coming down next to the Traptrix Butterwort, as well as the Sarah here. No actual back rows, which is good for me. Maxx's coming into the hand right on time here. Gonna use the Albion to set up the Branded Fusion in the graveyard. I'm doing that because I have the Retribution in hand, and it's not inconceivable that it could end up in the graveyard. Opponent's going to Maxx. I'm going to chain the Call By and also fire off my own Maxx, as I think it's reasonably likely my opponent's going to be special summoning during this turn. However, my opponent's going to use the Rafflesia to copy the Gravedigger's Trap Hole and negate the Maxx. That's actually completely fine with me too, because it uses up pretty much one of my opponent's main forms of disruption in the form of Rafflesia. For something like a Maxx, which I wasn't even expecting to activate, let alone resolve here. I'm going to activate this fusion deployment that we got here. It's going to allow me to summon the Albaz for my deck. Going to use Albaz to discard the Branded Retribution. We did end up top decking a way to discard the Retribution, so I am glad I set up the Branded Fusion in the graveyard. Going to summon the Mirrorjade utilizing the Sarah as a material, and then I'll banish the Butterwort here as soon as it activates. For those who don't know, I can never say this, Pinguicula is the scientific name for the Butterwort flower, so that's why I like calling her Traptrix Butterwort. I think it's a funnier name too, anyway. Now we get to Branded Fusion for the Albion. Albion's going to activate, banishing, well, Albion in the graveyard alongside the Albaz for the Dragostepelia. I think it was a bit of a misplay for me to send the Albion with the Mirrorjade. I probably should have just sent the Brigand, so that way I still had another Albion left over in my extra deck. Not that I think we're going to need it necessarily, but it could come up. So here I'm summoning Guardian Chimera thinking, oh, I can just clear off my opponent's board and swing for lethal. Right? Wrong, because I actually summoned Guardian Chimera with the effect of my Blazing Cartesia, but had I read the card, which, I mean, you know, you can only ask so much of me, I have to actually fusion summon it with a spell carder effect in order to get the Guardian Chimera effect. So rip me, I threw out a bunch of resources to summon a 3300 vanilla beat stick. So the field spell will prevent them from the, will prevent the Traptrix monster from being destroyed just once. Can still battle in for a relatively decent bit of damage here, but obviously I would have liked to have ended the game that turn. That said, we do have a Banishment and a Mercourier here, so our opponent is going to have to play through both of those, as well as the Dragostepelia negate as well. Gonna negate the Mantis effect that will prevent them from summoning, or rather searching and then summoning another Traptrix monster. Looks like they're going to link off into yet another Traptrix Sarah here. And they've got the Holietta as well. That'll activate the Sarah effect. I'm just going to use a Mercourier here, so again, we're not getting any access to more Traptrix monsters. And that ends up getting the concede from our opponent here. Beautiful. So, you know, even though I wasn't super familiar with how my opponent's combos played out, and I'm pulling a deck that I'm a little bit less confident in, and I did end up making a minor misplay here, still fine. We managed to find our way to lethal all the same. So that's going to do it for our first game. Let's go straight into the next duel here. Okay, next opponent is going to be on Branded Tearlaments. They are playing the 60-card Grass variant here. Let's see how this ends up shaking out. I get to take the first turn here, which is nice. And our opening hand it's alright. I've definitely had worse hands. We at least have the Branded opening. I'm going to go ahead and start off with that. Very grateful I'm playing 3 Albazes. I opened 2 of them. I've most often played 2 in pretty much every Branded build I've played in the past, outside of like some Grass builds. But I've noticed that pretty much the vast majority of builds are playing 3, so decided to just go with that. Makes sense with the fusion deployment being so important to this deck here. Alright, so they're going to Magnamhut and banish my Lubellion in response to the Albion effect. That's actually completely fine. Even if they had banished the Albaz, though, that also would have been fine, because I do, of course, have another Albaz, not only in my graveyard, but also in hand as well. That's also, I think, why they banished Lubellion with Magnamhut. It makes sense, because, you know, no point in really banishing the Albaz when I have 2 in the yard. Alright, Lubellion is going to fuse with Albaz now and summon a Mirrorjade. Gonna activate the Blazing Cartesia effect and then summon a fusion monster by fusing it with the Albion. Gonna summon the Granguignol. This will set up my Albion in the graveyard for the end phase search, as well as allow me to get an extra draw off the Granguignol effect. Opponent is going to Saronir the Albion in my graveyard, so that way I'm, you know, in an attempt to make sure I don't get the search. However, I haven't used Mirrorjade's effect yet, so I can just go ahead and do that. Also, because my opponent summoned the Saronir, I get to trade my Granguignol for a Despian Quaretits. That is actually another card you could conceivably drop from the extra deck if you're looking for some more space for something like another Super Poly target, but I like having the access to the big 3200 body, and also the ability to mess with your opponent's graveyard during their turn, especially against like Tearlament. It can matter quite a bit. Opponent's trying to Druiswarm during my end phase, but I'm just going to go ahead and summon my own Magnamhut here that I top decked, because that'll not only stop them from summoning their Druiswarm, but I still get the search and can hold a Bystial monster either way. But it's going to activate Pearl Rhino. I actually made a pretty big misplay here, in my opinion. I kind of thought this in game too. When this activated, I don't know though, if this had activated, I'm just realizing this now, if I chained Branded Red to summon the Guardian Chimera, the Pearl Rhino still would have resolved. So, okay, never mind. I forget what I said, that's actually not a misplay. For some reason I had it in my head that the Guardian Chimera effect would resolve before the Pearl Rhino was finished resolving, but that's not the case at all. So, I was going to say that was a misplay, but again, not necessarily the case here. Gonna Druiswarm to try to stop this Shiren. Opponent's going to chain their own Druiswarm, which is fine. The main thing I wanted here was for the Shiren to get banished out of the grave so it wouldn't activate, so that is a-okay with me. Alright, looks like we're sacking off Druiswarm for the Bystial Lubellion. Druiswarm effect to send the Proskinian. I'm just going to use Super Poly here and get rid of not only my Proskinian that's about to go to the yard anyway, but also the Lubellion before it has a chance to set up like a Branded Regained or a Lost or something. I'm going to go for the Tax Dragon, something Masquerade here as my Super Poly target to get a good bit of damage in on my opponent's life points here. As by this point, I'm pretty reasonably certain I can live through to my next turn. So if I've got the Masquerade to help me get in a bunch of chip damage here, it's going to make lethal on my follow-up turn a lot easier to find here. Okay, looks like Havendus is activating, fusing with the Lubellion, or sorry, with the Rhino Heart on board in order to summon Kiklos, and then the Lubellion will resolve, allowing them to fuse for the Mirrorjade. So, again, this looks really scary, but it's actually not that bad. I've already got Mirrorjade on my board, so if that gets into the graveyard, like, at all, you know, I know that's gonna wipe their board. Again, we have the Tax Dragon to steadily drain our opponent's life points, and I get to chain the Branded Red that's acting, and that's gonna get destroyed against the Pearl Rhino here, and now I'm going to fuse for the Guardian Chimera. This, I know, will force my opponent's Mirrorjade specifically on the Guardian Chimera, and not my own Mirrorjade, which will ensure that my own Mirrorjade will wipe my opponent's board if it gets destroyed at some point during this turn. And if it doesn't, then, hey, I get to have a Mirrorjade on my next turn. That's also fine with me. Guardian Chimera will get banished, as I mentioned, but it will, of course, still end up resolving, allowing me to draw 2 cards, very relevant cards, Kitt and Branded Fusion, as well as get rid of my opponent's own Mirrorjade here. Because I know my board's going to end up getting battled over anyway, I'm not really concerned about my opponent's Mirrorjade activating. Alright, main phase 2 opponent's going to mill 8, feel great, sending the Kitt close to summon a Merly here. Let's see what they end up milling off the top. There's an Albion and a Havness, although Havness is already activated. So is Shiren. There's both branded openings as well as the Retribution, so those are worth noting. Yeah, they do get to add the Fusion back, and they do have the ability to protect their Fusion monsters, of which they currently have none, but they are setting up a Branded in red from being destroyed. And then, yeah, Mirrorjade just pops their board. This will trigger the Merly, though, so that was smarter than to set up a Merly on board for the Mirrorjade effect here. This will allow them to summon a Rolkalos. I'm going to try to activate the Masquerade because it's once per turn. The Rolkalos will negate it, which is fine. And then, yeah, moving back over to my turn here. Oh, I also should have waited for my opponent to resolve Mirrorjade before trying to summon Masquerade. This Fusion deployment is actually a perfect top deck, because what I'm planning on doing now is baiting... Oh my god, this Kelbeck, though. This Kelbeck is so annoying, but thankfully my opponent did not mill anything super scary off of it, just a Keldo, which I'm going to force here with the Retribution targeting the Branded Fusion in my graveyard. But what my plan is here is to activate Branded Fusion to force the Rolkalos, then use Fusion deployment, summon Albaz, which will not only clear my opponent's Rolkalos off the board, but allow me to summon Mirrorjade and then just swing in for lethal. So, again, Branded Fusion getting negated is completely part of my plan. This is A-okay. They're going to send a Scream and add a whatever. Yeah, Solic, it's not relevant. Their hand isn't relevant. I only really have to care about their back row, which they haven't been given priority to activate at this point in the duel. Or no, that's not true. I was thinking of a different game, sorry. Because, yeah, we knew it was the face down Branded in red, which they do get to activate here, but they don't really get to do anything with this Mirrorjade they're about to summon because my Albaz effect is still about to resolve here. I get to actually fuse with their Mirrorjade before they have a chance to even activate their Mirrorjade's effect. This will proc their Mirrorjade effect to clear my board during the end phase, but, I mean, as you can see, they're about to lose anyway. We know their last 2 cards in hand are not any relevant disruption, so... Whew, there we go. I actually, while I was playing that game, did not think I was going to win it. I was like, oh, this will be a loss, but I'll show it anyway because it was a nice back and forth. But we did manage to end up coming back during that one, so that was very nice. Let's go and take a look at our next game here. Alright, so this game's going to be against Tearlament. Playing a few pieces of interesting tech, and most notably, they're playing a Blackwing Sharnga, as well as a Full Armor Master and a Baron in the extra deck. Interesting, it looks like they're trying to use Sharnga with exactly a level 8 monster. They don't have Chaos Ruler, so it's not a Synchro tier build. But they're looking to use exactly Sharnga with a level 8 monster to make either of those 10s. Opponent gets started off with a Pearl Rhino here. I do have the Saronir in hand, but it's my only piece of interaction here, and my opponent's doing a lot of really scary stuff. They did mill me a Saronir, so I'll use that Saronir effect to set something up in my graveyard. Gonna try to Saronir my opponent's monster. They're gonna chain the Medora they summoned. That's fine. Either way, it stops the tier from fusing, but we do know, of course, because they started by activating Pearl Rhino, that they have, yeah, the Rhino Heart. They're just gonna normal and then activate. I'm gonna set up a Retribution in my graveyard with the Saronir, just in case. We might get milled more this turn, and we might be able to get a Branded Fusion this way. Opponent's going to go for a Kikkalos, using that to add the Merly here. And yeah, we're going to pop up for the Kikkalos effect. Milling 8, feeling great. As both effects are activating, Kikkalos will start by milling 5, and then Merly the other 3. Yeah, we see a few pieces of their tech here, the Chaos Hunter, as well as the Evenly. I'm not a big fan of Evenly. Well, you all know that by this point. I made a whole video talking about how little I like Evenly. Chaos Hunter, I don't know. It's not the worst tech card you could be playing, but there's a lot of, especially in a 40 card deck, there's a lot of cards that would make the cut before Chaos Hunter. And here, I'm not really sure why my opponent made Kaleidoheart and not roll close here. I'm guessing the back row might be Soliac, and maybe they're trying to set up a summon with it, and that's why, but I think the roll close would have still threatened just a lot more here. But in any case, we have the call by in case, and we also have the Saronir in case our opponent tries to start setting up shenanigans in the graveyard. Here to start plays, though, I'm going to have to normal summon Cartesia and then fuse with the Tragedy to make the Granguignol. This will proc both effects. Unfortunately, the Tragedy can only grab Aluber, and I've already normaled. So I'm really just looking to get something off the Garura draw. We do get a Super Poly. Unfortunately, the Kaleidoheart can't be fused with, so we're not able to really utilize it right now, but by threatening to move to battle phase, I get my opponent to proc the Elf, which will allow me to send the Merly or banish the Merly to summon Saronir. Now, here's something I get to do to set up for my main phase 2. I get to run the Saronir into the Kaleidoheart, setting up the Brain Diffusion in my yard. Very glad I sent the Retribution earlier. And then I'll just Granguignol battle over Elf before activating the Brain Diffusion in main phase 2. Gonna start with the Albion line, sending the Albaz and the Lubellion to summon the Albion. Albion F to banish the Aluber and Albaz out of my graveyard. Aluber got milled there earlier by my opponent. That allowed me to summon Lubellion. Lubellion, I'm just going to discard my other Aluber because like I can't normal it anyway. Opponent is going to chain the Druiswarm on my Lubellion. The effect Lubellion that's in the graveyard, that's totally fine. I don't really care about that. I even get to keep my Fusion Lubellion on the field as I fuse the Garura in my graveyard in order to summon the Mirrorjade. Also, because my opponent summoned a monster, I get to swap out Granguignol for Proskinian. I'll use a Mirrorjade to go ahead and banish this Kaleidoheart, and then I'll use Proskinian to get rid of the Elf out of my opponent's yard. I want to keep my Monster Zone open, which is why I did not summon Elf to my field. We get to set a total of 5 cards, which is not something that Branded Despia often does, but is very scary when they do. And they're all very relevant threats here. So, opponent's going to start by linking off into a Sprite Sprint. I imagine they're doing this to try to get a Merly into the graveyard. That's fine, and I decided that Druiswarm on Proskinian, also fine. I could have called by it to try to stop it, but just didn't feel the need to. My board's already so good here. Plus, now I get to just use the called by on the Merly here instead. Alba, as a fun bonus, also gets to summon itself out of the graveyard. Although I did misplay a little bit and just summon it in defense mode without really thinking. I should have played it in attack mode. But even if they move to battle phase and just battle, sprint over Alba, I don't really care. They're going to have an Evenly, but the Evenly is going to be one that leaves me with 3 cards instead of just 1. So I'm completely fine with that. I'm just going to chain my Branded Red just to put back my Proskinian, because why not? And then Branded Banishment will bring back Tragedy, and then allow me to fuse it with Aluber in order to summon the Masquerade. And then with the Evenly, I'll just keep my Super Poly, Mirrorjade, and Masquerade. Opponent reveals their last card to be the Shadal Aerial, and then they just concede there. So that was a nice game where my opponent did get to start off with a pretty typical and, of course, as a result, strong tier play, but managed to come back all the same. Let's just go ahead and go into our final duel here. And our final game is going to be against Hero. Not just any hero, though. This is a 60-card hero variant. So, funnily enough, when this duel started, right, I saw my opponent was on the Cynet field, and I know I've said before I don't normally take cosmetics into consideration when trying to see what my opponent's on, but I saw the Cynet field, and starting off with a hero lives in a 60-card deck, and I was like, is there any chance in the world this is actually the 4-bud Skipper Mathmech combo that's actually 60 cards? But no. It's a 60-card hero deck. They're just on the... It's weird because, again, I don't talk much about cosmetics, but I swear literally every hero player I've ever played against is on the Skyscraper field. Of course, makes sense, but no, here, Neko is on the Cynet's field. Maybe hero isn't their main deck. Although, God, I can't imagine building a hero on any account and not having it be your main deck with how much it costs to build. But so I'm going to use Saronir on the Malicious here. I was actually just waiting for the Malicious to hit the graveyard, and want to have your toggle set to on as soon as you see the Malicious, because it does banish itself as a cost. So you can't respond to its effect to get it out of the graveyard into the banished pile here. But my opponent actually does a really nice pivot to set up Malicious in their graveyard anyway. They're using Destiny Hero Dangerous to mill their second Malicious, right? And now we're going to link off into the Cross Crusader before activating the Denier, before summoning the Denier. With the Cross Crusader, Denier will allow them to put back the banished Malicious, and now the Malicious in their yard is live once again. So kudos to Neko for playing around the Saronir, banishing the Mali there. But that did also force them to play their turn in a way they normally wouldn't have. Now my opponent will get to summon the Plasma here, which normally would actually be very scary. But I happen to have a particular card in my hand that makes that not threatening even in the slightest. Indeed, this is one of many reasons why I love playing 3 Super Poly. It's so good. It's not only disruption, it's also just a board breaker. Like, one of the things that kind of makes me a little anxious when I do play Branded Despia is just how light we are on disruption. Like, we don't play Ash Blossom or Imperm, but the fact that we play Bystials, we have disruption through those, and we also just play 3 Super Poly, so like, we're already playing 3 very, very good board breaker cards. That's not even like an issue for us to play, right? Yeah, my opponent's going to Veiler. Even if they hadn't conceded there, I did have the Call Bites just used on the Veiler anyway. And even if the Veiler hadn't resolved, could just move to Battle Phase and smack for lethal because they did start off with a Hero Lives, putting them at 4,000 life points going into my turn. So there's all those games. Again, was not expecting a 7-game win streak with the Branded Despia deck here in Upper Master, but we'll definitely take it and definitely appreciate it. So that's going to do it for these games. Let's just move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.